The University of Melbourne's vice-chancellor has told the Anti-Semitism Royal Commission his predecessor grappled with a decision to conceal the names of protesters who intimidated a Jewish academic. The university's interim head, Glyn Davis, told the hearings that since 2024, the institution had made a major effort to streamline complaints processes and develop policies to tackle racism. Professor Davis said Melbourne University security now had sufficient powers to dismantle a pro-Palestine occupation of university facilities if it were to occur again. Let's talk about what's happened right after this. University of Melbourne Vice-Chancellor Glyn Davis says the institution's management chose not to publicize the names of students it disciplined for occupying a Jewish academic's office to avoid making a stain on their young lives. The interim head of the prestigious institution today gave evidence to the Royal Commission of Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion, which is examining universities' handling of pro-Palestinian protests and their support for Jewish staff and students. Professor Davis took on the vice-chancellorship in February. He was based in Canberra in 2024 when enchantments of up to 110 tents sprang up on the south lawn of the University of Melbourne's Parkville campus. He was questioned about the experience of physics professor Stephen Prower, who told the commission yesterday of his disappointment at the university's response to the May 9, 2024 occupation of up to 20 masked protesters in his office. The commission heard Professor Prower was being targeted by pro-Palestinian activists due to his involvement in a long-running PhD research partnership with the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and their belief that it indicated complicity with the actions of the Israeli state. Professor Davis told the commission that years earlier he had helped establish a Hebrew University partnership and contacted Professor Prower personally after the incident to voice his sympathy. For him to be singled out and treated in this way was appalling, he said. However, Professor Davis backed his predecessor Duncan Maskell at the time and said the university had improved security for Professor Prower that year at its own cost to protect him. Ironically, he said, the very day tradespeople were working on Professor Prower's office to improve its security was when the protesters got in. Professor Davis said the university did grapple with whether to publicize the names of 4 students who were ultimately suspended for their involvement in the office incursion. But the decision was to conceal their names to not make a stain on the rest of their lives. I could say it wasn't made lightly, he said. Professor Davis condemned the protesters for inaccurately conflating the university's ties with Israeli academics as being somehow complicit to genocide. That's not just a slander, it's unspeakable, he said. He also condemned protesters to put up around campus about ties to Israel as anti-Semitic, including ones targeting Professor Prower. I found distressing the conflation of the Jewish identity with the actions of a nation-state, he said. This is anti-Semitism in my judgment and should be condemned. Professor Davis told the commission the university's primary goal in its handling of the 2024 encampment and protesters' occupation of the Arts West building during it was to avoid the violence that was occurring on US campuses. He said the university could not force the protesters off campus as security did not have sufficient powers. But Professor Davis added, the university has since changed its policy. If an occupation would happen again, security would have sufficient powers to dismantle the occupation, he said. It doesn't change security staff are limited in what they can do. They don't have powers of violence, nor should they. The university also paid for an independent racism review in June of 2024, which found racism was prevalent and systemic at the university, mostly in the form of microaggressions. He said, since 2024, the university had developed a website to act as a single front door for students and staff to make complaints, which went live last month. He said the vast majority of student complaints were to do with coursework, but that staff were being trained to respond to complaints of racism, including anti-Semitism.